The issue of race baiting and fear-mongering during elections time is still embedded in the minds of citizens in this country, particularly the not-so-young. Despite this, political activist and WPA executive member Dr. David Hines says there is nothing wrong with people having their own ethnic identity.
But it's when you exploit those identities in order to accumulate power and accumulate wealth that it becomes dangerous. It is when you exploit identity in order to create this narrative of the other ethnic group as inferior and not worthy, then it's when it becomes dangerous. And so what the PPP is doing is really trying to get Indian Guyanese, especially older ones, right, to remember this narrative that you cannot trust black people. That as soon as they get into government, there'll be a collusion between the civilians and the military, and that they will exercise force against you.
Dr. Hines was sharing his views on the PPC's concern about the apparent APNU-AFC's growing support in the security sector and the racial and scare factor by which the PPC campaign has sought to entrap its supporters.
The African Guyanese community in itself also have probably developed more of a distrust of the army and the police, although it's peopled by Africans. Because what we've seen over the last 23 years is how the PPP has been able to manipulate the leadership of the armed forces really to act against the livelihood and the interests of African Guyanese. And that was deliberate, because the PPP have always argued that in the 1960s, one of the reasons that they lost power was because the military elements did not cooperate with them. And so they came in with a definite plan that we are what? Going to neutralize the military, and at worst, what we are going to do, we're going to turn them against their own.
Dr. Hines blames the PPC government for splitting the dominant races in this country.
In terms of militarization, I'm arguing then, Andrew, it is the PPP that has militarized this country, and not just militarized it, but they've facilitated a linkage between the military and the non-military elements, the squads, phantom squads, and all these other elements, which we now know that there was a linkage between the government, the leadership of the military, and these quote-unquote extra-parliamentary, extra-military gangs. It is the PPP that has, in a sense, criminalized sections of the armed forces. Now, what they fear most is that the military itself would be working itself out of that.
But the ideology of the PPP, are you saying that it hasn't changed because they still believe in this Marxist, Leninist, Hitler kind of ideology?
The PPP, I think, what attracted them mostly to Marxism-Leninism, what attracted them mostly, well, not Marxism-Leninism, what attracted them mostly to communist governance was the old notion of one-party governance and domination. The PPP's ideology is steeped in the notion of domination, a domination that is really grounded in a kind of superiority. As we heard Minister Nandalal say very clearly, the old Chachri business, right? You know, mouth open, story jump out. They've always been grounded in that notion of domination. So when they begin to talk about, you know, the Granger cannot be a president and so on, and Granger is dangerous and so on, they're really playing to that old notion of domination, which is based on a sense of superiority and a sense that others are inferior.
Dr. Hines said, as a nation, Guyanese must hold governments accountable for such grave and despicable acts. Andrew Weeks, HGP Nightly News.